May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be aligned with your love, O God, our strength, our courage, our freedom, and our healing. Amen. I want to speak with you today about your authority, your personal authority, and how you use it in the world. And I want to start by reporting something I learned about the Sundance Film Festival, which is a fascinating gathering of people in the film industry in one role or another. And they gather together, they view new movies that are coming out, trying to sell them for distribution. It's held annually in Park City, Utah. Our Rector's Forum speaker this morning, Ken Turan, the LA Times film critic, spoke about it. Several other members of this parish were there and just returned from Sundance this past week. In the radio reports I've heard so far, I was struck by many things, but one thing I want to share with you that caught my attention because I've been living all week with this notion suggested by today's gospel lesson, that it's interesting and important to grapple with Jesus' authority. So I was very interested in a report that there were 2 documentaries at the Sundance Film Festival that dealt with what happens to people when they are authorized to do something, particularly to have power. And these 2 documentaries were about 2 famous social experiments, one that was conducted at Stanford and the other at Yale. And without going into too much detail, the Stanford experiment was called the Stanford Prison Experiment, which chose 25 male students out of a candidate pool of 75 male students. And these guys were chosen based on their perceived psychological health and no prison experience or background. And then the 25 who were chosen were randomly assigned roles of either being a guard or a prisoner for the experiment. They all agreed to live in a mock prison situated in the basement of the Stanford Psychology building for 2 weeks. And once the students were placed in the role of either being a prison guard or the prison guards were given their authority. In an orientation session the day before the experiment began. And the researchers instructed the college students playing the role of prison guards not to physically harm the prisoners. The professor who was conducting the experiment said, you can create in the prisoners feelings of boredom, a sense of fear to some degree. You can create a notion of arbitrariness, that their life is totally controlled by us, by the system, you, me. They'll have no privacy. We're going to take away their individuality in various ways. And in general, what all this will lead to is a sense of powerlessness. They'll have no power and we'll have it all. So the researchers provided the guards with costumes and wooden batons and mirrored sunglasses to prevent eye contact. And the guards were instructed to call the prisoners by their assigned numbers sewn on their uniforms instead of their names. Long story short, without going into the parts of the experiment which are really quite disgusting, it suffices for the purpose of this sermon to say that these so-called guards enforced authoritarian measures and ultimately subjected some of their prisoners to psychological torture. And then even those who were playing the role of prisoners, most of them passively accepted the psychological abuse, and at the request of the guards, readily harassed other prisoners who attempted to prevent it. 2 of the prisoners quit the experiment early, and the entire experiment was abruptly stopped after only 6 days. Now, one of the issues in my recalling this at the beginning of this sermon is that I think it connects us viscerally to today's gospel reading, in which the authority of Jesus astounds those around him. They say he teaches with authority, and not that kind of authority that the scribes use. In Mark's gospel, from which the lectionary has us reading this entire year, the year of Mark, the authority of the scribes is the authority of the occupying empire of the Roman Empire, which had successfully managed to get the local religious authorities to participate in carrying out or giving theological credence to the abuses, the oppression, the prejudice, and economic injustice necessary for the Roman Empire to be powerful. One of the most recent examples of this kind of complicity between oppressive governments and the church was in apartheid South Africa, where entire seminaries were given the charge to create a theology that supported the oppression of apartheid. And they did so based on the Bible and based on their interpretation of Jesus. The Roman Empire's power in Mark's and Jesus' day was dominating power, power over. Jesus, however, embodied a new power, a new authority, one that healed and cast out demons. And the question posed for you and me is, how do you and I, as followers of Christ, use the authority that you and I have been given? Because no matter where any of us may find ourselves in regard to the issue of authority, we all, to some degree, have authority, personal, institutional, or cultural, or all. And the question this morning, I think, is, will you and I use the authority we have to abuse and to disempower, or will we use our authority to heal, free, and empower others? Now, one of the reasons that this issue is so alive in me has to do with the fact that in the first year of my priesthood, I attended in Washington at the College for Preachers at the National Cathedral a very formative continuing education event. It was one of the most formative weeks I've ever spent. It was called The Role of the Church and the Authority of the Clergy. And the core thesis of the week was that in order to do their work, clergy have to take up their authority. They have to claim their authority. However, the choice is whether when you take up your authority to do your work, is it genuine authority or is it a power play? Before the week was out, we talked about the fact that all persons must take up their authority or power to do what they have to do. For instance, patients have to take up their authority when they're hospitalized to get good health care and attention from their doctors and nurses and insurance companies. Workers have to take up their authority to organize for their best working conditions. Parents have to take up their authority with children. And as a parent, I know that children take up their authority with parents. Teachers have to take up their authority with their students, and the best, most memorable students are those who've taken up their authority with their teachers. In other words, when you take up your authority, if you do not do it in such a way as to inspire the other person to take up their authority, if you don't take up your authority to authorize someone else to take up their authority, then it's a power play. All the energy that I have, all the confidence and hopefulness I have in my life has been in great part because I had parents, teachers, doctors, I had a psychiatrist, I've had spiritual directors, my family, my wife and children, they all claimed their authority in such a way that I felt empowered or authorized to pick up or claim my own personal authority. The Stanford prison experiment shows the depths of power plays and abuse to which we human beings can descend into evil. We human beings can descend to repugnant and disgusting and damaging levels of inhumanity. Unfortunately, the Stanford prison experiment can be shown to be true when we look most recently at the way authority was abused and used abusively in Abu Ghraib, in Guantanamo Bay, in almost every war, in certain police officers, in their relationship with unarmed black youth. And to shine the light on my own profession, at clergy abuse of young people and of women. Yet Jesus' teaching with authority was not about abuse. Jesus' teaching with authority was about healing and exorcism. The Markan scholar Ched Myers, his take on this gospel reading is that this was, early on in Mark's gospel, Jesus' foray into the temple as a symbol of the empire, to use his divine authority to heal and not dominate us, as an act against the empire and against religion having gotten into the bed with the empire. Our story, the arc that you and I travel every year as we tell the Jesus story over and over again, it is about Jesus' being baptized, and at his baptism being called the Beloved, and then our being baptized into that baptism of Jesus, and that including you and me receiving the same power that Jesus was given to be the beloved and to see belovedness in every other person. So as you and I journey on this arc of Jesus' story and find our place and our role in it, the question in my mind this morning is, what is the power? How do you understand the power that authorizes us to use our authority in the same redemptive way that Jesus uses his authority? What's the delivery system? What's the secret? What is it? Hence the rest of this sermon. Now, I had an epiphany last Sunday night, and it came from reading a packet of material handed to me at the Corton event last Sunday night about an upcoming conference at Pomona College, and this little 2-page essay by John Cobb of the Center for Process Studies described an epiphany he had, and this image that I'm about to share with you has changed my life. Now, here we go. Look at the photograph in the liturgy below my sermon title, which is You Are Authorized to Heal. And let me describe what's going on in that photograph. Now, John Cobb, for those of you who don't know him, is 89 years old, about to have his 90th birthday. And he wrote this little essay called Just One More Thing Before I Go. And what he talks about is the fact that we human beings have already passed the point where changes in our behavior will prevent extensive decay because of climate problems. It's not whether it's going to be bad, but the answer is, how bad will it be? But how bad is a very important matter, he says. It's too late to prevent extensive suffering. Unfortunately, that's going to be the culture in which you and I live the rest of our lives. But it's not too late to make some difference in the climate crisis. And John Cobb wrote in this essay, I'm convinced that we won't change direction until we change the way we think. We can't solve the problems of environmental and social decay while employing the very ideas that have caused environmental and social decay. The ideas that still underlie much of our thinking stem from the view of nature developed in the 17th century. And we do have to confess that some of us are stuck in the 17th century. The great thinkers of that time took the Strasbourg clock as their model for understanding the natural world. Everything that was thought could be explained in terms of machine parts. And unfortunately, our theology, the theology of the church, is stuck in the 17th century. Of a clockmaker who is out there and up there and is actually not the water in which we fish, swim, and move and have our being. Now here's the epiphany John had that I want to share with you. He said, recently an image was suggested to me that seems to encompass much of what I've wanted to say for many years. There are aspens, which you're looking at the photo of. There are aspens in southern Utah that spread over 100 acres. What we see appears to be a massive grove. And I hope you all will go home and Google that photograph, because it is absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous with these orange and golden aspen leaves on these white trunks, tree trunks. And it looks like it's a massive grove, but in fact it is one single tree, genetically the same, sharing one single root system. Now, what appears to be separate trees are actually, in fact, one organism. And when any part of the organism needs nourishment, the other parts of the organism come to its aid. Its name is Pando, P-A-N-D-O, Pando. And Pando turns out to be the largest and oldest organism in the world. When I did research on it, because this was just stunning to me, I didn't know it was true. How many had ever heard of this before? Yeah, it's just amazing. I'm not the only ignorant person in the world. Very few people in this room had known about it. And when you Google it, you find out that there are debates about how weighty, how many tons this one organism weighs. It is huge. And its unity has enabled it to survive radical changes and immense destruction. And sadly, it is threatened today as never before because of human activity. But, Cobb concludes, maybe if we get people to look at themselves and look at everybody else and look at everything else in the world with Pando as their model rather than the Strasbourg clock, we would develop different ideas of how to relate to each other and to the earth and to the universe, different ideas of what is valuable and important. Marcus Borg, before he died, week before last, talked about the essence of dominating power and the essence of evil being the delusion that I am separate and that I am superior. When I see a person on the street who is homeless, and I think that I'm separate or I'm superior. That's Pando walking around. I get condescending and elitist about people who don't understand God as progressively as I do. And I begin to feel separate and superior. They're Pando. I get horribly upset at violent extremists hijacking a religion I love called Islam for beheading people. And I feel separate and superior. Pando. Every human being you and I read about or look at and feel separate and superior, that is a delusion. And to the degree that you and I want to authorize or you claim our authority in a way that heals the world and exorcises it of its evil demons like Jesus did, I think that Jesus, in his mystical, contemplative life, knew that this is the way the entire creation works. He tapped into it, and you and I are called to tap into that power too. Yesterday was would have been the 100th birthday of Thomas Merton, my North Star. When I was an agnostic, an atheist, I was living out of my false self, trying to be an attorney in law school, lost as a ball in high weeds. It was Thomas Merton's writings who healed me. Just a few days before he died at age 53 because of a electrical short in a stand-up fan that fell on him when he got out of the shower. And he was in Bangkok just a few weeks before that happened. In 1968, he gave a speech to a gathering of nuns and monks from Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. And he closed with these words: "My dear brothers and sisters," now think of this, "we are already one, O-N-E. But we imagine that we are not. And what we have to recover is our original unity. What we have to be is what we are." And then called on to pray. He said, if we are going to live into this oneness, we this morning could say this Pando, we could this morning say this authority of Jesus that is given to us to heal and exercise. He said, if we are going to do that, we've got to find new language by which to pray. We've got to find new liturgy, new hymnody that doesn't put us Christians in a place of feeling delusionally separate and superior. So he asked those people to join hands. He said, I'm going to say a prayer. I don't know what I'm going to say. Let's be quiet for a while. But what I want you to do to help me pray is for you to get in touch, concentrate on the love that is in you. Think Pando love. And that love that is in us all. And then he prayed, "Oh God, we are one with you. You have made us one with you. Help us to realize that there can be no understanding where there is mutual rejection. Oh God, in accepting one another wholeheartedly, fully, completely, we accept you and we thank you and we adore you and we love you with our whole being because our being is in your being, our spirit is rooted in your spirit, Fill us then with love, and let us be bound together with love as we go our diverse ways, united in this one Spirit which makes you present in the world and which makes you witness to the ultimate reality that is love. Love has overcome. Love is victorious. May it be in the way we claim and take up our authority, so that this can be in the world. Amen.